Welcome to MLK Manifesting the Dream, an annual program of We the World to carry forward the work and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. To learn more and get involved, please go to we.net/MLK. My name is Rick Ulfik, and I am the founder of We the World and the We campaign at we.net. We the World is an international coalition building organization that unites and promotes the efforts of people, organizations, and movements working for the common good. Today, as we honor Martin Luther King Jr., we consider that his work continues to be completely relevant today. I am excited that we will be hearing from members of the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning, which was originally founded by Rabbi Michael Lerner and Peter Gable. The Foundation for Ethics and Meaning members will each say a few words about what they see as a politics of meaning approach to the times we are living in, considering the work of Martin Luther King Jr. regarding ending poverty, racism, militarism, hyper-consumerism, and promoting nonviolence and building beloved community. I'm going to spotlight the members of the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning now. Nanette Schorr. Hi, Nanette. Bruce Novak. There you are, Bruce. Ruth Garbus. Hi, Ruth. Rosa Naparstek.
Yes.
And here's Julie. Hi.
Hello.
Good to see you, Julie.
Here, very glad to be here this morning.
Yes. So, Nanette, let's start with you. Could you please introduce yourself and maybe mention the award you received recently and how it is connected to the politics of meaning, and anything else you want to say about the politics of meaning related to MLK. Welcome to the broadcast, Nanette Schorr.
Thank you so much, Rick. I'm sorry I didn't get to my unmute button earlier to acknowledge you're welcome, but great to be here. I so appreciate the work of We the World, we.net, and this feels very organic to that work. So I'm really glad to be here. To give you a little bit of background on FEM, the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning, and how it connects to Martin Luther King's legacy, and I will just give you a little bit of sense of what the politics of meaning is. So the politics of meaning is an approach that looks at every human being as valued for their intrinsic worth. We focus on what we call a new bottom line, the creation of new bottom line, which measures the success of every sector of society, whether it's the economy, the schools, the healthcare system, the legal system, based not on whether it maximizes money, profit, and power, which speaks back to the themes that Rick was mentioning, but by the extent to which they maximize love, caring, kindness, generosity, compassion, social, economic, racial and environmental justice, and peace and nonviolence. The politics of meaning vision is grounded in the understanding that we and everyone in our culture carries within us a powerful longing for authentic connection to others, through which we also can be seen and affirmed. And because of this, successful social movements toward equality and justice would aim to focus on the development of programs which address in a healing way the isolation and alienation within each of us, and leave our culture impoverished on a policy and larger community level. So the politics of meaning has led to the formation of many different endeavors embodying these principles. And for me, I worked with the two people that Rick mentioned, Rabbi Michael Lerner, editor of Tikkun magazine, and founder of the Network of Spiritual Progressives and FEM, and Peter Gable, his thought partner and associate editor, and also founder and creator of New College of California. PISLAP, or the Project for Integrating Spirituality, Law, and Politics, builds, and we're located, by the way, at spiritlawpolitics.org, builds on Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of justice as love, correcting that which revolts against love. It is about bringing love, and we think of love as attunement to the other, empathy, understanding of the depth of our connection. We're bringing those values into the political process and also into our legal system. I'm a lawyer and work for an organization that represents low-income people. That's been my work for many years. And so the work of renewing the law and the legal culture and the justice system feels very close to my heart. Areas that PISLAP has addressed over the years include the transformation of legal education to make sure that human interests matter in the way students are taught, the transformation of the practice of law in all its facets, and the reintroduction of restorative and collaborative practices in the way that law is actually embodied in the court system and in the legal culture, so that repair of relationships has an important role. I wanted to quote, Rick mentioned the award I received. I was very honored to receive an award in honor of Peter Gable, who passed away a little over 2 years ago. And Peter talks about the legal system as and culture as one where separation and disconnect between self and other, which is at the root of so much social injustice, needs to be healed. So I wanted to read a brief quote from Peter before I close. When we fully enter into each other's presence, when we fully recognize each other in our sacred humanity, we actually experience the energetic flow that connects us. We emit an invisible but palpable radiance linking the poles of our being as we come into connection and experience one another as here together, embraced in each other's sight. This kind of encounter, sometimes occurring in two-person encounters and ubiquitously in the rising period of liberatory social movements, is inherently egalitarian. No one is experienced as above or underneath anyone else, but rather we all experience each other as fully present together in the same space, on the same solid ground of being. We form a real and felt we, not an imagined we out there that we imagine we are a part of. So that is Peter Gable speaking to the politics of meaning and to the spirit of mutual recognition, which is so much at the heart of Martin Luther King's legacy. Thank you, Rick, for having me.
Thank you, Nanette. Let's hear from Bruce Novak.
Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to follow Nanette. And what I'm going to try to do is, I'm a philosopher and a teacher. And what I'm going to try to do is to connect the history of the politics of meaning to our present moment of potential civilizational collapse, and how what we all need is what Nanette just spoke about through Peter. So I do a lot of work at libraries, and when I go to libraries, what I see are these little bundles of joy um, and love led around by their parents, for whom you cannot see the love in their faces and in their movements. And what I want to propose to you is that, but the politics of meaning is nothing but a renaturing of us to our loving presence that we have naturally. Jean-Jacques Rousseau famously said, we are born free and yet find ourselves everywhere in chains. And what I want to do a little MLK twist on that is to say that we are born freely loving and yet find ourselves everywhere in chains of hatred and possessiveness. And to renature ourselves, we need to face how we became hating, how we became possessive, and how we can become freely loving once again. So I'm going to, with that, I'm going to give you some history. I write about a philosopher named Edmund Husserl, who was what is called a phenomenologist. Peter Gabel continued that tradition of phenomenology. In 1935, in the face of Hitler, Husserl gave the famous Vienna lectures in which he said that this very moment in which what we thought of as civilization has become nothing but ashes and barbarity. In this moment, that metaphor, the phoenix rising from the ashes, is perhaps the only moment in which we can redeem ourselves, in which we can renature ourselves. Okay, he wrote that in 1935. In 1936, the phenomenologist Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was soon to become a rabbi and eventually became Martin Luther King's friend and Rabbi Michael Lerner's teacher. So there's this direct personal link. He published his dissertation. He couldn't publish it in Germany because he was Jewish, published it in Poland, called The Prophets, in which he envisioned that the origins of biblical Judaism came about by these people who saw their civilization or the lack of the temples, etc., as a desert from which they needed to call their people to recall them to life as this phoenix. And that was the origin of what we now know today as Judaism. The Bible was written by the prophets and their generation. Okay. Heschel, in the face of he came to the United States and became a famous philosopher teacher, but was not particularly an activist until Martin Luther King came around and the civil rights movement came around. And he republished his book, The Prophets, in 1962. And of course, Martin Luther King became a huge fan of it, and they became very, very close friends. Okay. In 1965, Heschel published a little book that's not much read these days called Who is Man?, in which he said what we need to do is refocus our world on people, that we're focused on things, but we need to refocus on people. Okay. 1967, Heschel and King were both at Riverside Church, the main location of this wonderful event that we organized, Rick in particular, in 2000, called Reimagining Politics and Society in the Millennium. Well, King in 1967 said this, and it was basically the translation of Heschel's The Prophets and Who is Man for the central need of our time. He said, what we centrally need is the rapid transition from a thing-oriented to a person-oriented society. Okay. So he didn't say how we do that, but my work as an educator is basically about that. I published a book dedicated to FEM called Teaching Literacy for Love and Wisdom. And what I want to say is that wisdom and hope are the idea that we could have a world that is imbued by love that is in our nature. Okay. And I want you to think about, I'm writing a piece in which the centerpiece is the focus of a teacher with a 2-second interaction with the student, in which he gives the student thousands and thousands in a few seconds of what I call micro affections. You've probably heard the term microaggression, which is the way that hegemonies are instantiated in our everyday life. But in another way, our loving nature is instantiated in our everyday life by the people who offer themselves to us as people. And any teacher who is a real teacher, that is the central thing they do. Their subject matter is peripheral. It's that connection with them, their students, others, and the world that is central to teaching. And what I claim in this paper I wrote about King and Heschel, inspired by our talking today, I said, these are the better angels of our natures. All of us would not be listening to this unless we had a plethora of people who bundled up who they were, their essence, and by paying attention to us and giving themselves to us, they literally became what Lincoln referred to as the better angels of our natures. Yes, we have angels in our natures as loving, but everybody, each one of us, has so many people who have loved us into being. Okay. And so, what I would like everyone to do at this moment is to conjure into your mind at least a dozen of those people who gave themselves to you. And then to think of who you have mentored into life. Maybe it was just a little word, maybe it was just a little touch, maybe it's a lifelong relationship. But think about that you yourself are a better angel. And when we have those images in our minds, we have a microcosm of what the world imbued with the politics of meaning and a Martin Luther King politics of love would look like. And I'm sure you're going to hear more of that from our following speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce Novak. Next, let's hear from Ruth Garbus.
Wow, that was quite something. Bookends, Nanette and Bruce's words. I remember the beginnings of my own sense of injustice in this world and a desire to be actively opposing it. It just amounted to my being very aware as a young child of class and ethnic differences and the almighty black-white differences that were everywhere in the little town of Kingston, New York, where I was raised. And I think the beginning of my social activism came when I identified with my Black, I can't say friends because there was no medium in which I could make Black African American friends, but I stood up. I asked my mother, why wasn't she friendlier to this woman who came in to clean every 2 weeks? I went in Florida and sat in the back of a bus protesting in my way before the bus strikes, the terrible separation of one human from another. And I don't know how it is that I seem to have been born with this little cauldron percolating in myself that really did not let me be quiet or unaware, inured to the injustices that I saw around me. My actual working in the schools for a while as a counselor, as a community builder for something called Network in the Schools, gave me a tremendously visceral and dramatic sense of what ongoing segregation and dismissiveness and lack of love does to our children in the public school system. I saw teachers, African American teachers, constantly angry and upset and hardened to the cries and pleas and upsets of students, because for some reason it occurred to me that the teachers knew that this was part of the life of their students, and they could not show sympathy. I'm just imagining this as part of the process, how they could appear so hardened to the suffering that was all around them, and the hurt and the need for connection and an environment of love. And I recognized that only a culture of love, such as Martin Luther King expressed, and that we all have felt in our hearts to be the only way to have a life in an environment, in a social environment that is sympathetic and cultivating of our better natures, we had better really cultivate love, the beloved community. So in the community building work that I did in those schools, I tried to create an environment in which the sensitivity of one student could really be seen and registered by the other students. Very, very hard. I saw that there was already being indifferent one to the other of the suffering around. I am leery of making this a blanket statement about all kids in all schools, but I was working in inner city schools, and I was just struck and heartbroken by the lack of love that I witnessed. And the tears come. This is a good thing when our tears come, and we want to stand in solidarity with those who are cultivating love and kindness in our world. And perhaps the best vehicle for this is community building. And Rosa, you're going to hear from Rosa, but Rosa and I have been involved with community building, and it is really a forum for, not a forum, but a modality to practice experiencing empathy for the other. And I want to close with that. And right now I'm retired, so my working in the schools is not a very recent event. That was in the 90s and a bit in 2000s with the community building, but I am sure that it hasn't changed that radically. So Martin Luther King, you express what is really the common impulse in all of us to be kind, to show love, to not reject, and to know that nothing is really alien to any of us. And I'm very grateful to Rick for allowing me to just speak spontaneously about these things. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Ruth. It's always great to see you. So let's now hear from Rosa Naparstek. And I think you'll be, I think, Nanette, you will be sharing the screen with some images as well, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So Rosa Naparstek. Welcome
It's a hard
to the
one to
course.
pronounce.
Yeah.
I can't even spell it correctly.
Uh,
My name is Rosa, and I'm very, very happy to be here in the context of FEM and Martin Luther King Day. I am an artist. I'm a visual artist. I work with mixed media and basically anything I can find. My aim, my work, my focus is on trying to develop ideas, concepts, and work integrating knowing and feeling. I used to say the personal and political. And yes, it's become part of our almost mass language, personal, political. But integrating knowing and feeling is a whole other layer of what is necessary. And in order to develop the politics of meaning further, I think we need to integrate our knowing and our feeling. And Peter Gable, who Nanette spoke about earlier, one of his favorite quotes was from Van Morrison's song, "I Didn't Believe That Love Existed." And in that he says, and I know I'm going to misquote it, but it's the effect of, if my heart could think and my mind could feel, I would begin to know what's really real and change the world anew. So, my own history, I was born during World War II, and since a very, very early age, I've always been compelled to understand the source of cruelty. I won't say evil, although each civilization, each period has to contend with that primal question. But cruelty is a little bit more manageable. What is the source of cruelty? So I went to college to study physics, of course. What is the major impetus of the universe? Quickly disappointed, I became a political activist, worked in many modalities, and kept finding that wherever I went, we would always fall apart on issues of personality, more so than ideology or concepts. So at a certain point, I began to try to explore things at a deeper level, realizing that fundamental change could not occur without going at a deeper level. And that led me to look at things deeper in myself and opened up areas of myself that I didn't know existed in terms of artistic expression. And it also coincided with my discovering of an alternative approach to politics. I worked with James and Grace Lee Boggs in Detroit, and then with FEM, the Politics of Meaning, the Foundation of Ethics and Meaning. A major part of my artwork, it's not even a major part of my artwork, it's what has inspired it, is to work within the context of community building. Just to do isolated art pieces never really interested me and still doesn't. I present my work in the context of community building circles because I believe that art opens up a moment, a still point, if the art is working. And it works differently for everyone, but there's a still point of presence. And community building also can create a moment of a still point of presence, where we drop down into our authentic selves. So I believe the still point of art is a perfect context to have a community building circle, which hopefully the art inspires some kind of moment where the person has left one's persona and is connected to their truer selves. And this can allow, in the context of a community building circle, for people to connect at a deeper level also with each other. So I'd like to go to my piece and explain why I think that has some connection to everything I've been talking about. And let's roll to the top.
There you go.
This is the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone was discovered many, many, many years ago in Egypt, and it was the key to understanding hieroglyphics. So this piece for me, the Rosetta Stone, is the key to the concepts contained on the other part of the image. So what we have here is a grill, a hibachi grill on a wooden box on a pedestal. But inside is a cutting board. So can we get to that? There it is. Okay, thank you
Oh,
so
that's
much.
it. Okay, good.
All righty. So this is inside of the great. And what it says is, from where I came, no one could tell the things I'd do when I grew up. Blood, anger, hate, death, turning myself inside out to cleanse the world of pain. Sun, sea, earth, stone. I was too long left alone.
Hmm.
So the myself and the world are on Scrabble pieces. They're interchangeable. You can put the world, turning the world inside out to cleanse myself of pain. Thus, the world and I are basically one. And on the other side of these Scrabble pieces are the letters I, you, you.
Hmm.
So this references what I believe is this one of the sources of cruelty. The cruelty, isolation, aloneness many children feel in life, not sufficient love, the things that Ruth talked about. So I think that this is a key to trauma and to what happens to us. Often we hear that those who have been treated terribly treat others terribly, but also those who have been treated terribly learn to treat themselves terribly. It's all intertwined. So when I bring
Right.
into the context of
All right.
a community building circle, it does elicit emotions in a discussion, and we're asked to drop down into our deeper selves. One of the things that Ruth and I are very proud of is when we think of what we have said about community building. Community building is to the collective what a spiritual practice is to the individual. Well, what does that mean? It means that in the context of being with others, we have the opportunity and the challenge to heal, learn, and transform ourselves. Okay, I saw the signal. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. My pleasure.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Rosa. And next, let's hear from Julie Oxenberg. I'm going to bring her up. Hi, Julie. And
Hi.
thank you, Rosa.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you, everyone. This has just been such a rich and inspiring, impressive presentation. And I am a psychologist. I also have a degree in international relations, and I've done a lot of work over the years at working at projects that have it at the intersection of politics, psychology, and spirit. And that intersection is what drew me to Tikkun and to the politics of meaning initially. And I really view the politics of meaning as uh, developing in all these different avenues ways to cultivate the beloved community that Martin Luther King spoke of, and really embodying Martin Luther King's insights into the world. And I want to just say something a little bit about King and some of the core insights that everyone knows, but it's worth just tuning into that much more deeply again, and how I see that relevant to our current moment, which would seem almost the antithesis of, the beloved community and so much of what King spoke about. But it all kind of comes together. And just to emphasize that, Martin Luther King obviously saw our human condition with a searing clarity and recognized the ultimate sacredness and worthiness of every living being. That wasn't just a concept. It wasn't just a nice sentiment to preach. It was a truth. He saw this. These are truths that he saw, that this is the truth of our human condition. And when we are living out of alignment with that truth, the world really can't work. It can only move into ultimately distortion, destruction, and potentially extinction of our species altogether. And that's, he recognized, connected with this, that we are all profoundly interconnected internally, externally, that web of network of mutuality tied together in a single garment. And that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And that the ultimate power that both really sustains us and sustains our world is love. It is rooted in love. It is the core power, even though we see things rather differently our notions of power are so out of sync with that. And that's where, when King talked about justice and power and their connection to love, that power and love are not antithetical, they actually complete one another. And that justice is what love looks like in public, because what that means is the commitment to treating every single being as the sacred reality that each one of us is justice, is the implementation of justice in public. And that justice at its highest is love, correcting everything that stands against love. And that's the truth of our being and the path that we all must be on in order to realize ourselves, one another, and to sustain our world and allow it to thrive. And bringing us to this contemporary moment, we see this new moment of in which there's truth. We live in a post-truth world, apparently, and that it seems like the ultimate antithesis of love, truth, beauty. People have just elected a leader who comes from, sits in rooms plated with faux gold, and who, expresses a faux populism, and who seems to be a caricature of the actual lack of ability to even love. And where is this coming from, right? And I think that a lot of the people who voted for him and who support that movement, another thing King recognized is that when we are hurt, when our truths are not being acknowledged and recognized and honored, we have a tendency to act out in all kinds of distortions, and so often in self-destructive activity. And he talked about this with respect to activism and certain forms of activism, that people may, have an impulse toward wanting a certain kind of power and maybe implementing that in a violent way or in an alienating way, but that it is ultimately self-destructive, because that's not the only thing that can really create that justice is a movement that embodies the very truths that you're demanding for yourself, that helps people to feel that themselves. And that at this juncture in history, just to kind of wrap this up, though, where we can go from here, which was, of course, the title of King's last work, is that we're actually at this moment in which that I think is the culmination of a long era in which we have worshipped money and material over everything else, and over love, over the spirit. And but we are now at a juncture where this is kind of an apex. This is what is manifested when you come to, when you fulfill that. And now, however, we must turn around. We have the capacity, and all the economic growth that we've done, we do have the capacity to feed and sustain us all. We have developed that, and now we have the ability and the absolute urgent need, urgent need of now to turn around and reshape and rebuild from the beginning. If they're burning it all down, we now need to step in and manifest and truly build that politics of meaning, that beloved community, and a way of living that really is living in truth. And so much of what Martin Luther King has said. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And it sounds like you have identified a bit of a call to action, which I was going to bring up in a few minutes anyway. But thank you, Julie. So I'd like to say a few words about the challenges of building MLK's dream of beloved community. There are some challenges in together doing that. Can we build beloved community with our current epidemic, and I would call it an epidemic of disinformation in the media? I am saddened to see the results of big money special interests pouring literally hundreds of millions of dollars to create a hurricane of lies, conspiracy theories, and hate speech about immigrants, election fraud, rising crime rates, trans people, and even misleading information about who is responsible for higher prices of groceries and gas. The overall effect is a culture of us versus them, including plans for mass deportations. Despite all this, however, I and We the World are working with thousands of people and many organizations around the country to carry forward the work and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. The Compassion Games, the Muhammad Ali Center with their Index of Compassion, Unity Earth, the Evolutionary Leaders, AmeriCorps, and so many others are literally manifesting MLK's dream as we speak, promoting nonviolence and, yes, actually building beloved community. So thank you. So now I'd like to bring everybody back on the screen and ask if anybody wants to raise your hand and say, what is your call to action if you have one? Do you want to say anything about that, Nanette?
Sure, Rick. First to say, although everyone who spoke is a dear friend of mine and I've heard them speak before, I thought this was extremely powerful and really wove together some deep components of the vision of Martin Luther King Jr. And I think, really all of us, whether through our personal history and the work that we've done and in the ways that it all weaves together, are very connected to his vision and to the creation of beloved community. We ourselves here at FEM are a part of the beloved community. Or not a part of it, but we are a beloved community. And of course, there are so many. And so I think, from the pointing out of the political distortions through the disinformation that you spoke to, Rick, and, Julie's discussion of MLK's vision of the human condition, the clarity of his vision, the artwork that Rosa is where she is embodying moments where people are authentic and we're and are able to see each other more clearly. And Ruth's, history of her childhood and her inner passion for social connectedness and for speaking up, for just acting on her feelings. And Bruce's discussion of MLK Jr.'s friendship and connection with Abraham Joshua Heschel and what that means, and Bruce carrying forward that work himself. Everything that we've discussed really is part of a call to action. So my feeling of call to action is to try to heal the rifts that have arisen in our society and culture through weaving together this vision of MLK Jr. As embodied in so many different ways we discussed.
Well, thank you, Nanette, so much for kind of bringing it all together. You really were able to do that so masterfully.
Thank you, Rick.
And this is maybe a good place to just wind up. And I feel that this has been an extraordinary conversation. Thank you so much for your wisdom and inspiring comments. And thank you all for watching this. To get involved with MLK Manifesting the Dream, go to we.net/MLK. And you see my three fingers here. Beloved community is all about we, right? So let's go from a me society to a we society. That's why we started we.net. So thank you all so much. Bye-bye.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Rick, for organizing this. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rick.